My heart sank as I stood at the doorway, watching my husband, Daniel, pack his bags. He had been talking about this trip for weeks now, a boys' trip to some remote cabin in the mountains. It was supposed to be a weekend of bonding, fishing, and, he said, just getting away from the daily grind. I tried to sound excited for him, tried to play along like I always did, but deep down, something about it didn't sit right with me. "Are you sure you're okay with this?" I had asked, my voice soft, betraying the hint of concern I felt. It was the third time I asked, and the third time I got the same answer. "Yeah, it's fine, Sophia. You'll be all right. I'm sure you can handle a couple of days on your own. It's just a weekend, after all." Those words stung more than I let on. I was used to being the one who held everything together, the house, the bills, the errands, the emotional weight of everything. But this time, it felt different. It wasn't just about the trip, it was about the way he brushed off my health issues like they were nothing. I wasn't asking for a grand gesture, I was just asking for some empathy. It had been a tough month. I'd been dealing with more than my fair share of doctor's appointments, tests, and follow-ups. The pain in my body had been intensifying, and the exhaustion weighed on me like a heavy blanket. I was physically drained, but I still kept up appearances, kept things running. But Daniel hadn't noticed. He hadn't once asked how I was feeling or offered to help. Instead, he had been focused on his own plans, as usual. I had hoped, maybe naively, that he would cancel the trip, or at least offer to stay home. I needed him. But instead, he just shrugged it off, packed his things, and left. And as I stood there, staring at his bag in the hallway, I realized something important. I had always been the one to make things work. I was the one who adjusted, who put others first. But this time, I couldn't ignore the hollow feeling inside. I couldn't ignore the way he made me feel small and insignificant in the face of his own desires. "Have fun," I said, my voice tight with restraint. I tried to sound cheerful, tried to force the smile that always seemed to cover up my disappointment. He didn't even look back as he walked out the door. I stood there in the empty hallway, feeling the walls closing in around me. As the sound of his car pulling out of the driveway faded, I felt a wave of emptiness wash over me. The house felt cold without him, but the coldness wasn't just physical. It was something deeper. I sank down onto the couch, clutching my phone tightly in my hand. I stared at the screen for a long time, my mind racing. He had left. He had chosen to go away with his friends while I was left here alone, dealing with my own health struggles. My fingers trembled as I scrolled through my contacts, staring at the names of people I had once called friends, family. But even they felt so distant. My sense of isolation had grown in the last few weeks, and now, it felt suffocating. I knew I had to make a decision, and it wasn't going to be an easy one. But something inside me had snapped. I couldn't keep pretending that everything was okay. I couldn't keep living in a relationship where my needs were ignored, where I was always the one left holding the weight of everything. I took a deep breath, trying to calm the rush of emotions threatening to overwhelm me. I didn't know what I was going to do, but I knew this: I was done. Done with being invisible. Done with being the one who always understood. Done with giving without receiving. The next few days were a blur. I moved through the motions, working from home, managing the house, taking care of myself the best I could, but in the back of my mind, I kept thinking about the future. About what this relationship had become. And about the fact that, despite everything I had done for him, I had never truly been a priority for Daniel. By the time the weekend arrived, I had made up my mind. He was coming back to a different home, a home that no longer felt like mine. I spent most of the time in a haze. I wasn't sure if it was the weight of my illness or just the mental exhaustion that had caught up with me, but every day felt like I was walking through a fog. I tried to focus on things that might make me feel productive, sorting through the kitchen drawers, checking emails, or working from my laptop, but my mind kept returning to the same thought: how could I allow myself to keep going like this? How long would I let him ignore me? The way Daniel had dismissed my concerns, brushed off my health issues with a wave of his hand, made me realize just how little respect he had for me at that moment. For everything I did, for all the things I juggled without asking for help, he had failed to notice. And now, as I sat on the couch with a cup of tea in hand, staring out the window, I knew that something needed to change. I didn't want to be in this relationship anymore. Not because I didn't love him, I did, in a way, but it was different now. It wasn't the love I had once believed in. It was a love tainted by neglect and complacency, by the feeling that I wasn't enough and that I could never be enough. I deserved more than that. I glanced at my phone, and once again, the message from the leasing office stared back at me. We had been renting a beautiful apartment in the city for years now, an apartment that had once been full of life, laughter, and hope. But lately, it had felt like a prison. It was his place more than it was mine, and I had started to feel suffocated in the space that had once felt like a home. I needed to make a change. I needed to reclaim my life. I tapped the screen to open the leasing office's contact information. The thought of breaking our lease was terrifying. It meant I would be on my own, no more shared responsibility, no more comforting idea that he was just a room away. But that's exactly what I needed. The idea of removing myself from that contract felt like a first step toward freedom. I couldn't let him come back and expect everything to be the same. I couldn't go back to being the invisible partner, the one who did everything while he lived his life without ever looking back. When he returned, I would be gone. It wasn't about punishing him, it was about finally putting myself first. It was time to stop trying to make a relationship work when it was clear that I was the only one making any effort. I took a deep breath, and with a shaking hand, I composed a message to the leasing office. Hi, I'd like to initiate the process of removing my name from the lease. I will need details about the next steps and any necessary paperwork. Thank you. Sending the message felt surreal. My pulse quickened, and my heart seemed to race as I placed the phone down on the table. This was it. This was the turning point. As the hours passed, I kept thinking about how Daniel would react when he returned. Would he even notice? Would he care? Part of me wondered if he would just expect me to fall back into my old role, the wife who was always understanding, always accommodating. But I knew that couldn't be me anymore. I thought about packing up my things while he was away. I could make it quick, just take what I needed, leave behind everything that didn't matter anymore. But something stopped me. I wasn't doing this out of anger, not anymore. I wasn't packing my life into boxes in a fit of rage. I was doing this out of self-respect. I was choosing myself, for once. I knew it wasn't going to be easy. I knew it would break my heart when he came home and found me gone. But it was the only way I could break free from this unhealthy cycle. I couldn't wait for him to change. I couldn't wait for him to finally get it. I had spent too many years putting my needs on the back burner, waiting for a change that never came. Now, it was time to take control. The decision was made. I had taken the first step toward reclaiming my life, and now it was time to follow through. Daniel's trip was supposed to last the weekend, but I had already decided that when he returned, the house would be empty. The apartment we had shared for so many years, the place that had once been filled with hopes and dreams, would no longer be my home. The days leading up to his return were filled with a strange mixture of calm and nerves. I wasn't exactly sure what to expect when he came back. Would he be angry? Would he even care that I was gone? Would he simply walk in and assume I was still there, waiting for him as I always had? I spent the next few days making preparations. Packing my things wasn't as difficult as I thought it would be. I went through our shared closet and separated out the few items I had accumulated over the years of clothes, toiletries, small mementos, and placed them in boxes. I didn't need much. I had always been the one who had made do with less. And now, in this moment, I realized that the things that once held sentimental value had lost their significance. I didn't need a lot to start over. What I needed was freedom. The apartment felt emptier with each box I packed. The walls, once adorned with photos of our travels and celebrations, now seemed cold and indifferent. It wasn't just the physical space that was changing, it was everything. The idea of leaving this place, of leaving Daniel, was more than just a logistical step. It was the culmination of years of quiet resentment, silent suffering, and unspoken pain. As I carefully stacked the last of my belongings, I looked around one final time. The place we had once called home now felt foreign to me. I didn't recognize it anymore. I spent the rest of the evening packing up the last few things: my computer, a few personal items, and my passport. The apartment was now empty, save for the faint echo of footsteps that had once filled the rooms. But those echoes no longer carried the same weight. I wasn't afraid anymore. The last step was to leave him a note. I knew it was necessary. I couldn't just disappear without saying something. But I also knew that anything I said had to be clear, direct, and final. There would be no going back from this. I wrote the note carefully, trying to express everything I felt without turning it into a drawn-out letter. I wasn't doing this for sympathy or for closure, I was doing this because it was the right thing to do. Daniel, I've packed my things and moved out. I'm done. I need a life that's mine, and I can't keep living in a relationship where I feel invisible and unimportant. I've asked to be removed from the lease, and that process has been completed. I wish things could have been different, but I can't keep waiting for you to notice me. Goodbye, Sophia. I placed the note on the kitchen counter where he would find it, then turned off the lights. It was time. I had made my choice. I had chosen myself for the first time in a long time. The house felt empty, but it wasn't the kind of emptiness I had come to fear. It was a kind of freedom I hadn't known existed. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I could breathe again. I wasn't tied to anyone or anything. The future felt like a blank page, and for once, I didn't feel scared to write my own story. It had been a full day since I left. A day without Daniel, a day without the constant sense of waiting for someone who never seemed to care. The silence in the apartment was deafening, but it wasn't the kind of silence I dreaded. It wasn't filled with unresolved questions or fear. No, this silence felt different. It was peaceful. The first few hours after I left were a blur. I hadn't planned exactly what I was going to do next. I hadn't even fully figured out where I was going to stay. All I knew was that I couldn't be in that apartment anymore, and I couldn't be near him. So, I booked myself into a nearby hotel, nothing fancy, but enough to give me a place to gather my thoughts. The bed in the hotel room felt oddly comforting, like a temporary refuge from everything that had happened. I was alone in the quiet, and for the first time in ages, I allowed myself to feel something other than the constant tension and worry that had come from being in a relationship where I felt unseen. The next few hours passed with a sort of numbness. I scrolled through my phone, trying to focus on work to avoid thinking about Daniel. But then a message popped up, and I froze. It was from him. Sophia, where are you? What's going on? I don't understand. Please talk to me. I stared at the message for a long time before replying. Part of me wanted to tell him everything, the anger, the frustration, the pain that had been building for years. Part of me wanted to demand an explanation for why he had been so absent, so selfish. But I knew that wasn't what I needed. I wasn't going to waste any more time trying to get answers from someone who had already made it clear that he didn't care enough to give them. Instead, I wrote a simple reply. I'm done. Please respect my decision. I hit send, then put my phone down. That was it. I wasn't going to chase after an answer I knew he couldn't give. I wasn't going to beg for him to care. This was about me now. I spent the rest of the day focusing on myself. I took a long walk through the city, letting the cool air clear my mind. It felt good to be outside, away from the confinement of the apartment. I hadn't realized how much I had been suffocating under the weight of our relationship until I was free of it. The world felt bigger, brighter. I could breathe. That evening, I went out for a quiet dinner at a local restaurant. It wasn't extravagant, but it was something I hadn't done for myself in a long time. As I sat there, alone with my thoughts, I realized how much I had sacrificed for the sake of someone who wasn't even willing to show up for me. As the night wore on, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was a call from Daniel. I stared at the screen, feeling a rush of emotions flood through me. Part of me wanted to pick up, wanted to hear what he had to say, but I knew better. He didn't get it. He wouldn't get it. I let the call go to voicemail. I wasn't ready to hear him tell me how much he missed me, how sorry he was. I didn't want his apologies. I wanted action. I wanted change. But he had never been willing to change, not for me. For the first time in years, I felt a sense of clarity. This wasn't about him anymore. It wasn't about trying to fix something that had already broken beyond repair. It was about me reclaiming my life, my happiness, my future. The next morning, I woke up to more messages from Daniel. Some were pleading, others frustrated. But all of them felt the same to me, empty. I didn't bother to read through them. Instead, I spent the day sorting through my thoughts, trying to map out the next steps. The thought of moving forward without him, without the weight of our shared past, seemed both daunting and exhilarating. I took a walk to a nearby cafe, enjoying the quiet of the morning. I didn't know what the future held, but for the first time, I didn't feel burdened by it. There was something empowering about knowing I had made a decision for myself. When I returned to the hotel that afternoon, I finally took the time to go through some of the documents I had been avoiding. The lease had been officially removed from my name. The apartment was no longer mine, and I was free. It was in that moment that I felt something shift inside me. The weight of the past, of all the years spent trying to make a relationship work that wasn't meant to be, suddenly felt like it had been lifted. I wasn't going to wait for someone who didn't care about me. I wasn't going to chase after someone who only saw me when it was convenient for him. For the first time, I realized that I didn't need Daniel. I needed myself. I needed to heal, to grow, and to find the person I had lost somewhere along the way. The thought of the future no longer terrified me. In fact, it excited me. It was a new beginning, and this time, I would be the one in control. But then came his desperate attempts to win me back, his safety net. It started with an email. The subject line read, "I can't lose you, Sophia." At first, I hesitated to open it. I didn't want to give him any more of my time or attention. But curiosity won out. Inside, he poured his heart out. He apologized for everything, every selfish action, every moment he had taken me for granted. He told me he was lost without me, and how empty his life felt now that I was gone. He promised to change, to be more considerate, to finally show me the respect I deserved. He begged me to come back. I stared at the email for what felt like hours. The words seemed so familiar, like recycled promises he had made 100 times before. In the past, I might have believed him. I might have allowed myself to get swept up in the idea of what we could be, of what he could be. But not this time. I had heard it all before, and I wasn't falling for it again. I deleted the email without replying. The next day, Daniel showed up at the hotel. I hadn't expected him to track me down so soon, but when I opened the door, there he stood, his face full of desperation, his eyes pleading for something he didn't deserve. He didn't even give me a chance to speak before he started talking, his words spilling out in a frantic rush. "Sophia, please. I've been such an idiot. I know I messed up, but I can't live with myself knowing I've lost you. I'll do anything, I swear. Just give me another chance." I wanted to say something, to tell him everything that had been building inside me, but I held my ground. I wasn't going to let him manipulate me anymore. "I'm not interested in second chances, Daniel," I said firmly, my voice steady. "I've made my decision. It's over." His expression faltered. For a moment, it seemed like he was processing the reality of what I was saying. But then, something changed. A flicker of anger crossed his face, quickly masked by an attempt to stay calm. "You're just going to throw everything away, just like that? You're not even going to consider how much we've been through? How much I've sacrificed?" His voice rose. His tone accusatory. "You're so selfish, Sophia. You're just going to leave me like this without even trying?" I took a deep breath, refusing to let his words get to me. I had heard them all before, the guilt trips, the attempts to make me feel responsible for his unhappiness. But this time, it didn't work. "I'm not throwing anything away, Daniel," I replied quietly. "I'm just choosing to live for myself. You never considered my feelings, my needs, and now it's too late." The silence that followed was thick, charged with unspoken words. Finally, he turned and stormed off, his footsteps echoing in the hallway. I watched him go, feeling a strange mixture of relief and sadness. It was over. But that wasn't the end of it. Daniel's desperation only grew from there. He started showing up at the hotel unannounced, sometimes at odd hours of the night. He sent flowers, expensive gifts, and tried to call me repeatedly. He even contacted my friends and family, begging them to talk to me, to convince me to come back. He was like a broken record, repeating the same mistakes over and over, unable to grasp the fact that I wasn't going to return to him. I remained resolute. Each attempt only solidified my decision to move on. It was clear to me now that he didn't understand the gravity of what had happened. He wasn't trying to change for me, he was trying to change because he was losing control. And as his attempts to win me back escalated, so did his downfall. In his desperation, Daniel made a fatal mistake. He started taking his frustrations out in public, at work, with his friends, and on social media. He posted cryptic messages about betrayal, about how some people just don't appreciate what they have until it's gone. The posts were aimed at me, though I'm sure he never expected me to see them. I did, of course. And it made me realize just how far he had fallen. He wasn't just hurting because of our breakup, he was hurting because his ego had taken a blow. He was angry, but not at himself. He was angry at me for not giving him the chance to keep me under his thumb. Then, it all came crashing down. Daniel's behavior started affecting his work life. His colleagues noticed the change in him, the late nights, the mood swings, the erratic decisions he was making. He had always been competent in his job, but now, he was distracted, unfocused. His boss called him in for a meeting, and it didn't take long for Daniel's shortcomings to come to light. He had been missing deadlines, making mistakes in his reports, and his performance had significantly dropped. By the end of the week, Daniel was let go from his job. He called me, of course, to blame me. "This is your fault," he yelled into the phone. "You've ruined my life. Everything was fine before you decided to leave. Now look at me, I'm nothing." But the truth was, it wasn't my fault. His downfall wasn't because I left him, it was because he had failed to recognize what was important. He had taken me for granted for far too long, and now he was paying the price for his own neglect. For the first time, I felt no sympathy. I wasn't going to feel sorry for him.